Hey, it's Joe with Lords of Capital. Happy to be coming to you. It's the third episode, and going to get straight into the topic. Before I got on, I went back and revisited. What is this all about again? And I actually wrote a sentence, and I haven't covered it in any of the prior podcasts. So, gonna put it here. If this is your first episode listening to, or maybe you've listened to the last two, and I think that this will help distill exactly what it is that the goal is, the aim here. And so here it is. It says, living is acting. Acting requires knowing how to act, what to do. This requires a evaluation system because in order to act, we must know what situations mean. Situations was parentheses, so we must know what something means. Evaluation system equals morality. Morality equals defining what is good or bad. And this is a value system which helps people know what to do and why, acting and living. So this is what it's all about. It's helping you know how to act and why to act. It's a map, it's a template, a resource to distill wisdom and to give you some more clarity on how you should handle a situation. So today, I'm going to get into the topic of being humble, and the contrast of that is of being prideful, and how that can be a deterrent. It could be very bad for you, for yourself personally, and if you're an entrepreneur, especially for your business. So James 4:10, humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. And we'll contrast that with Proverbs 16:18, which said, pride comes before destruction, a haughty spirit, which is basically a prideful spirit before a fall. And so what that means is, how I look at that is, we live in an environment where there are what we call influencers, and they're all over the place. It seems like maybe the last 4 or 5 years that the idea of being an influencer has gone parabolic, and there's a lot of people out there who want to aspire to be an influencer. So being an influencer, what that entails is really having the chutzpah, having the courage to go out there and let people know what you think and where you stand on positions. And that in itself is the reason why people are attracted to that is because that conveys authority. It's very hard, very difficult. I preach it all the time. It's hard to get in front of a camera, to get on a mic, and to speak your thoughts, speak your ideas. And it's just painful for people to hear themselves talk. And so a lot of people don't want to do it. And so being an influencer nowadays is just having opinions, and by having opinions, it attracts people who have those same opinions, and the idea is you build a following, and hopefully, and then the long range plan for these guys is to monetize that, So I'll tell you really forthright, on that note, this is not what that is about. That's not the agenda in the long run. And I can tell you a long time ago, before I even got into business, was, one of my prayers was that, hey, if you take care of everything, give me a business that can take care of myself, my family, and provide for me, so that I can talk about your truths unabated. So meaning I don't got to worry about, am I going to lose money? Am I going to make money? I don't got to do any of those things, because that's not what's providing for me. And so you got to keep that in mind, that when you're listening to people, that this is what they do, that there's a monetary aspect to it. And so there's some persuasion, and there's some possible restrictions that don't allow them actually to be forthright in how they really feel and how they think about issues, because there are, it'd be like Fox News, right? You wouldn't expect Fox News to tomorrow start talking about liberal ideas, because that's not their audience. And so, so there's this vacuum, so to speak, and you're missing a lot of different ideas and information because of that. So just be cognizant of that people that do this to make money, that's their goal, to make money. And so you shouldn't listen to everyone. You should, think about their pocketbook and how what they're saying is affecting that. So this is not what that's about. This is truly about, this would be the part for me about doing something meaningful. I don't get paid for this. I don't want to get paid for this. This is my service to everyone and people, because of how blessed and fortunate I've been that now I can give back some of this knowledge and wisdom that I've learned. So, humility. And so I brought up the idea of influencers because everyone has so many opinions. And the issue that I have with that is, and look, and I'm an opinionated person, and this has really evolved for me and changed for me, is that the issue I have is to take a position of authority in a place where that's not even possible. So, for example, there's so many people that are taking this position on remote work and how this is the new thing, and anyone else who doesn't abide by it is just legacy and old school, and they're going to get left behind. And see, I have an issue with that, because I don't think that's factual, because for the most part, we can agree that America and the American enterprise has been successful. And if you think about the common denominators related to that, being in the office, congregating has been one of those. So there's more evidence and proof that working together in the office is better, more beneficial for a workplace than the latter. And so when someone comes across that, I'm like, well, what is your evidence? And mostly what I see is their positioning is coming from a place where, well, you don't have to be in the office to get what you get done. And I would agree with that, but I would also say that's not the only reason you come to the office. There's other reasons. A big reason is learning. There's a book out there, Thinking for a Living, and just you can do a general research on the subject, which is how do people learn? And people learn through observation. There's so much communication that's nonverbal. I'm throwing out a number here. This is anecdotal, so I'm not pulling up statistics, but 70-80% of language is communicated nonverbally. That's a lot of language, a lot of communication. And so there's just nothing that can really beat, someone coming to your desk and saying, hey, here's how you do it. It's not as effective as doing that as opposed to being virtual and remote. Not to even mention emotions. You don't get that in teams. So someone is, maybe you're giving someone a task, but they're having a bad day, and you can't really get that. And so how do you even address that? How do you have leadership? How do you manage that? Makes it very difficult. And so I think that there's more evidence, on this particular issue for the fact of being in the office is more beneficial than being out the office. See, but again, this is the issue of humility versus pride, is there are people taking positions on the other side as if that's absolute, as if that is, almost Newtonian physics, and that this is the absolute answer and there's no other one. And I just don't think that's the case. And, I think that that they're probably going to have issues down the line with retention, with training, with all of those things. And I'm seeing it from people that are of that vein, that they do have trouble keeping people. Whereas we're a firm that has pretty much kept our team intact. This tax season, we didn't have any turnover. We have some people out on maternity leave and things like that, but no turnover. And we're an office that's here in the office. So my evidence is different than that. But again, it comes back to the issue of humility, right? And what humility is. And what humility really comes down to is realizing that if you are gifted and you do have skills, and that there's no reason to be puffed up about them. And this is of the same vein that I'm taking a quote, actually, it's probably verbatim from Jordan Peterson, is that there's no reason to get all puffed up about them because you didn't have. I mean, you didn't have. It was a lottery. I mean, you didn't wake up and say, I want to be socially bold. I want to be intellectually inclined. You didn't do that. So if you're gifted and you're an entrepreneur and you're successful, what's the point of being puffed up about it? Like, you didn't really have much to do with it anyway. Even if you're a hard worker and you're industrious, well, some of that is a lot genetics. Yes, we give you the props for taking that and taking that and using that to your advantage, but I mean, as far as the hardware is concerned, you didn't come up with that. So that's just having that understanding, and when you have that about yourself, it makes you less prone to pride, which pride is, oh, it's all me, I did this, and elevating yourself above people because you think you're distinguished from them because of something that you've done or can do that they can't. And there's just no reason to do that because you're just fortunate. If you're in America, and especially if you live in Houston, I mean, there's so many different things, variables that come into play that you had zero to do with. Just you didn't have anything to do with it. So it's having that mindset that, hey, I'm grateful and I'm blessed and I'm fortunate, as opposed to me, and that translates to your relationships and how you talk to people, how you view other people. You are less susceptible to thinking people are lower or lesser than you, and that life is this Olympic game that we're all running. And so that is a great, because some people, you say what life is. Well, life's a dance, or life is, that's the one that comes to mind. Sometimes you hear life's a game or life's a journey. But it may be, based upon the reference of Paul, that life, a great way to look at life is as a game. And so when you think about the variables of a game, well, there's a prize. There's a prize. And there are players. There are rules. And there's also chance. So think about Monopoly. And so this is the issue about humility, right? Is that you have to incorporate the idea that you can possibly pull a chance card, and that chance/chaos is a part of the game. And this is really fundamental to reality. I mean, and this is across, like, this is just universal. The idea of chaos or the unknown and the known, part of reality and part of the thing that we deal with. And so pride does not account for that idea. It doesn't really act it out, because if you wake up every day and realize that, hey, okay, I have a plan, but there's no way of being absolutely sure that this plan is going to happen, because anything can happen. God forbid, you can walk out, you can drive and you can get in a wreck, and that totally change your life. So when you account for that the idea of chance, the idea of chaos, the idea of the unknown being real and relevant, you're less likely to be a prideful person, because you realize that if you've gotten through a successful day or you've created a successful business, that there are a lot of variables that had to happen, and there are a lot of things that could have happened that didn't happen. As opposed to someone who's a very prideful person, and they think that everything that they did was because of them, because of their hands, because of their luck, and it's just not the case, because of what I just said there. And so, being humble means realizing that there are a lot of things that are out of your control, and that when things go right, a big part of that is because of those things that are out of your control working for you as opposed to against you. But in some cases, they can also work against you. But there's no reason to get all bent up. If I pull a chance card and I'm playing Monopoly, there's no reason to get all bent up about that, because we know that that's part of the game. See, but a prideful person can't filter that in the right way, because they don't incorporate that into the way they think about the world. And so when bad things happen to prideful people, it's usually devastating. It's usually destructive. You think about 2008, 2009, I was going to school in college with, I think I was at Sam Houston State. I was in graduate school at that time, and I was studying with someone whose dad committed suicide during the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, because his whole world, he lost his job, his whole world fell apart, and that was just too much for him to handle, apparently. And unfortunately, very sad, very tragically, he took his life. And and you say, how could someone, obviously he was a very successful person. If he had, if this had the impact that it had on him, whereas, losing things, I don't think you are affected by, economic recessions or anything like that if you don't have much to lose. And so I'm assuming that he had a lot, he was successful, but yet when chaos, uncertainty, unknown happened, tragically, it seems like that was, that was to his demise. And that's very sad. And so you ask, well, how does that happen? But it's because, like I said, they don't really account for the idea that of all these unknowns, of all these things. And so they have this grandiose view of themselves. And like Proverbs 16:18 says, pride goes before destruction. So when what is coming next is the fall, because even Ray Dalio talks about these archetypes of business and the economy. And we do have these archetypes, these patterns. We have boom, we have bust, we have boom, we have bust. When the economy grows, businesses grow. Everyone does well. And so again, that's another reason not to get all puffed up about that, because, well, everyone's doing well, the economy's doing well, but it's when things go bad, how do you handle that? So when you're a humble person, see, you realize that there are things, that there are seasons, and there are things, and there are variables that you don't know. You have no idea. The definition of the unknown is that you don't know, and you can't know, and can't conceive what are these things, what are these variables, but they're out there. They're out there. They're right out there. You walk out that door, they are there. They may not affect you every day, but they're there. I broke my Easter morning, my dishwasher broke. That was not in my plan. Now, that's a small thing, but that wasn't in my plan. I woke up that day, didn't know that was going to happen, and it could have thrown my whole day off. But I've already account for this because, again, this is a game, and I'm going to draw a chance card every now and then. There's no reason to get all crazy about it or to throw the game away. We just have to adjust, reorient, be strategic. And so, look, when you begin ending on this, so we talked about what humility is, the danger of being prideful, that it can really destroy you. How humility, it says here, that he will lift you up. And so when you start acting humble, one of the things that happens is you're less susceptible to being wiped out. Because just as there are variables and there are things that you're not in control of that happen to you, that to your benefit, you also understand the contrast of that, which there are bad things that happen. We live in a fallen world where bad things happen, and the flip side of there's good things I'm not in control of, but I benefit from and I'm grateful for. The other side of that is there are bad things that happen that I may not be in control of, and there's no reason to be all bent up about it or to blame yourself for them. You should have an attitude of humility. And so that allows you to get through what I call the valleys, because you're going to experience them. And many businesses have not experienced them in a long time. We've been in a very, very long economic boom. But eventually, we know booms bust. And I don't know when, I'm not predicting. But eventually, the economies are going to slow down. There's going to be, if we had to put our money on it, there's going to be another recession. And so that's coming. And so a humble person accounts for that. And so instead of falling and getting destroyed during those times, they're lifted up because they've already built that into their psyche. They've built that into their systems. They've built that into their businesses. And so they are, when the rain comes and the storm comes, they're prepared. They're not wiped out, and they're standing tall. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe and share it with people who you think would want to subscribe. But share the love again, and I will talk to you next week. Thank you.